gentlemen, welcome back to the Conflict Zone, your go-to source for insightful discussions on international affairs, law, and security. I'm your host, Dr. Christian Barrientos Ichaso, and today we have a truly exceptional episode lined up for you. We're diving deep into the heart of the matter, exploring the unfolding events in Ukraine and shedding light on the expertise of a distinguished journalist who has covered such critical international conflicts. Our featured guest needs no introduction to those who closely follow military and intelligence matters. With an impressive career spanning numerous renowned media outlets, Martin Arostegui stands as a beacon of experience and knowledge in his field. Martin Arostegui's remarkable career. Martin Arostegui is not just a journalist, but a seasoned war correspondent who has ventured into the heart of conflict zones to bring us the stories that shape our understanding of global events. He's been a voice for the voiceless, reporting on the complexities and nuances of international conflicts that mirror the current situation unfolding in Ukraine. Arostegui's byline has graced the pages of reputable publications such as Voice of America, The Wall Street Journal, The Daily Telegraph, The Washington Times, CNN, FOX News, UPI, and France 24. His reporting has provided invaluable insights into the world of military operations, intelligence strategies, and geopolitical dynamics. Twilight Warriors, exploring military special operations. But Martin Arostegui's influence doesn't end with his reporting. He is also an accomplished author, having penned the enlightening book Twilight Warriors. This book delves into the world of military special operations, shining a light on the brave men and women who undertake covert missions to ensure our security.
Hello, Martin. How are you?
Hi, Christian. How are you? How are things? Glad to be on board as usual. So, I think we've got a lot to talk about today. Do you have those sounds that I got you the other day from Odessa on the Russian air raid?
Yeah, I have
the Russian missile strike? Okay. Play them and I'll go from there so people can get an idea of what's going on here. Okay, these were the sounds over Odessa about 10 days ago, when the Russian Navy launched missile and drone strikes against the port of Odessa, which managed to destroy a target they've been after for a very long time. That is a critical rail junction between the port and the Ukrainian railway system, where grains are brought in from the interior, stored, and transferred onto ships for export. This facility in the port, which they've been after for a while, they managed to hit, and from the looks of it, completely destroy 2 Sundays ago. And since then, they've hit it again to make sure that that the Ukrainians can repair it. It's very clear. I mean, they used Onyx missiles for this. These are high precision, supersonic, guided missiles, of which the Russians don't have very many at the moment. So, an analyst of the Ukrainian Navy explained to me that this just showed the priority that this target had for them, and they destroyed, silos full of grain and storage facilities and cargo facilities and so on. And now the Russian objective with this is twofold. First of all, they're out to destroy Ukraine's ability to export grain, and therefore seriously damage their economy, because grain is one of Ukraine's main exports. It has been for a long time the mainstay of its very large agricultural sector. In the middle of a war, it's very difficult to get any other industry going at the moment, except maybe possibly some defense industries that have been getting set up. So this is, in fact, the main lifeline now for Ukraine's economy. And their inability to continue to export grain would makes, we don't know the extent to which this has already been accomplished, Ukraine's economy virtually unviable. It ceases to be a viable economy, and it becomes some kind of garrison state, supplied and supported by NATO. So that is one of the objectives, which is, of course, very important. But the second objective is Russia's using this not only to undermine Ukraine's economy, but to increase its own leverage in the international food market, which is, of course, one of the most basic sources of supply there is in the world. I mean, it's the food market is essential for the international market. In certain countries, it's a matter of life and death. And by preventing Ukraine or blocking or destroying Ukraine's ability to export grains and cereals, Russia is empowering its own ability to use its grain exports as political leverage to gain control and dominion over the international food market and increases political and military influence in Africa and the Middle East. So it's a twofold objective for Russia, which is the reason why this particular target, which is probably Ukraine's largest grain export terminal, is so important. They tried to hit it several times, and they finally got it about 10 days ago using these very expensive and very prized hypersonic missiles. So this is essentially where things stand at the moment, and frankly, it does not look good for Ukraine. They've also, of course, they've targeted another port, very very close to a sort of sister port called Mykolaiv, also with heavy missile attacks, and of course the ports on the Danube, along the Danube River, which Ukraine has been using as an alternate route to export its grains down the river Danube into Romania, and for the grain is transshipped in the Romanian port of Calzedonia, if I'm not mistaken the word right now. And of course, from there, it has safe passage being protected through protected NATO waters to the Turkey's Bosphorus Straits and out of the Mediterranean. So, but Russia is also seriously interfering with that, and they're hitting the Danube ports with drones because the air defenses there are very, 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 very limited, and so they can hit them with these Shahed Iranian-made Shahed 136 drones, which are causing a lot of damage. They've already destroyed large stores and cargo facility and port infrastructures in the Danube already, just with drones. So this is where things stand at the moment. Now, of course, Russia is relying on its Black Sea fleet to do this, and the Ukrainian response so far appears to be quite effective. Now, just to give you some background, the Black Sea Fleet is a very substantial Russian military unit composed of maybe 30 vessels, combat and auxiliary vessels, based in the Black Sea. Their base is in Sevastopol and Crimea. And it's been using this very large naval component to try to block Ukraine's trade routes and also destroy their port facilities. Now, Ukraine has been has launched quite effective attacks against Russia, against the Black Sea Fleet. They've manufactured these new, as far as I know, it's the first country to use them, at least in any large scale, maritime drones. They are floating drones, which move at a large speed, sort of on jet ski type engines, carrying very large payloads of between a quarter to half a ton of explosives. Which have proved highly effective against Russian ships. I mean, Russia now it doesn't dare go very near Ukraine's coasts, which has allowed some grain shipments to get out, because if Ukraine can make the run between its waters and Romanian waters on the Black Sea, it can skirt around the Russian patrols. It has to be much further south of Ukraine because they're in fear of being hit by these maritime drones, which have a long range. They have a long range of between 800 and 1,000 kilometers. So they can hit Russian ships at a considerable. The Russians have to be at a considerable distance to protect their ships. And in fact, they've even managed to hit they hit. This was in the news quite a lot. I mean, they hit the actual Russian base in Sevastopol with drones, maritime drones, as well as British Storm Shadow missiles, long-range Storm Shadow missiles delivered by the British and launched from M29 and MiG-29 aircraft, Ukrainian MiG-29 aircraft, which blew up a Russian submarine, one of the submarines which has been launching missiles against Odessa, and a landing ship, and a amphibious landing ship, the second landing ship to be hit over the past month, which indicates to me that any idea of any Russian landing and amphibious operation in around Odessa is pretty much, it's pretty much in the dream zone at this stage, or the nightmare zone, as they would care to put it. So they've hit the Russian naval headquarters. There was some question as to whether they actually managed to kill the admiral in charge of the Black Sea Fleet. Apparently, it's not true. They didn't kill him, contrary to initial Ukrainian claims. But I think they did manage to get quite a few of the staff and the whole communications node that operated out of there, presumably, this is according to the Pentagon, as well as S-400, very sophisticated S-400 anti-aircraft systems deployed in the area. So this was quite a hit. And as a result of that, Russia has had to redeploy its Black Sea Fleet from Sevastopol to the Sea of Azov, to a naval base in Azov, a smaller naval base with the more limited facilities in Novorossiysk. But even there, I mean, Ukrainian drones, the maritime drones, can still reach ships coming in, which they have done. They hit an oil tanker, and they're exposed. They're exposed to attack. They still have to pass through Sevastopol to do certain things. That's where they have to load up with the missiles, for one thing, before they hit Ukrainian ports. So Russia still maintains the capability of hitting Ukraine. They've got 2 or 3 corvettes and maybe a frigate, plus 1 or 2 submarines that are still operating in the area. deployed in the Black Sea within missile striking range of Odessa. But their ability to interdict Ukrainian shipping is limited, and some grain shipments are getting through the Black Sea. So they are managing to keep the Russians at arm's length to some extent. Also, Ukrainian SEALs, their special forces, equivalent of the SEALs, Navy special forces, captured 3 Russian oil drilling platforms, which the Russians, they have been drilling oil there for a very long time, obviously since the war started. But they're being used as lookout points and radar stations to intercept Ukrainian shipping and air traffic in the area. So this has allowed them the ability to stage these surprise attacks. So they have been quite active in the Black Sea. And they have scored some pretty big hits against the Russians. But it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, to further restrain or to totally restrain Russia's ability to conduct standoff missile attacks on Ukrainian ports, which they continue to do with quite a bit with frequency. They've hit Odessa twice since the time of that the raid that the missile attack that was on that tape you played. Now this takes us to well, first of all, let's take an overall view of the Black Sea, the battle for the Black Sea, which is a key battle. I mean, if Russia does manage to destroy Ukraine's ability to export its grain, as I said, it will destroy Ukraine's economy. It will neutralize. It will make Ukraine an unviable state in any economic sense. But let's look at the whole picture now. The Black Sea, the Battle of the Black Sea, of course, the outcome depends to a very large extent of what is happening with the Ukraine counteroffensive, which has made some painstaking gains in the south as I've gone on, as I've mentioned in previous podcasts, and I think it's all over the news now. They have managed to breach the first line of Russian defenses, but they're having a very hard time hanging on to that or securing it. The flanks are still not secure at all. The flanks are still very exposed. They've been trying to get these 2 road junctions on either side of Robotine, which is this town they managed to take when they made the initial breach, but they have not managed to secure control of them. The Russians are counterattacking. Positions there, trench positions there, sort of switching sides. One day some of the Ukrainians have them, next day the Russians have them. And I don't think that they're yet in a position safe enough to deploy a large number of, say, armored divisions, tank units to make a big thrust against the secondary fortifications, which are much heavier. Here we're talking about, pillboxes of bunkers of reinforced concrete, at least 2 or 3 layers of trenches. We don't know how many men in there, but presumably they've been reinforced. So it's a much to hit that from the position that they have now is certainly has no certainty. And I think if they tried it, it would probably be a big failure. And they'd run the risk of getting overexposed, getting overextended. The Russians could then now flank, and they could surround a Ukrainian army right there in this breach. So I don't think they're going to try it before winter, which means they probably won't try it before next spring. So I really don't be wrong, but I don't think that this particular offensive has much of a chance of succeeding. If they could succeed, if they could cut off the Russian supply logistic lines to Crimea, which would be the next target in Mariupol and another railway node, then they would cut off Crimea. Would be in a very precarious position. They could attack it from the positions on Ukraine's southern coast, from Odessa, from the north. They would totally, they would be able to, they'd have the Black Sea fleet and the Sea of Azov completely surrounded, and unable to move and vulnerable to missile attacks at all times. So I think that would be the ultimate scenario for a victory, for Ukrainian victory. But with the way it's going right now, with the land offensive having achieved very, very limited gains, and having a hard time hanging on to the gains they have, I don't see that happening anytime soon. Now, what does this do? Well, we're in for a long winter. Okay, we're in for a long winter in which the ability to conduct land operations will be restricted. It will be limited, and like last winter, Russia is going to take advantage of the situation to attack Ukraine, Ukrainian infrastructure, the industrial base that they managed to rebuild. Arms factories they're starting to build there for drones and other weapons with Western defense manufacturers, and as well as Turkey, and also the civilian infrastructure, energy, electricity, and what all the people need for heating and cooking and surviving. Now, I think they're going to hit these this winter in a very big way. And they're developing more missiles. I think that there has been a tendency to underestimate, or other analysts, not me, but other analysts are much more informed than I am on this particular subject. There's been a tendency for the West to underestimate the number of missiles the Russians actually have. And they're producing more. In fact, they're producing, as I recall, as I understand, a new type of missile, the KH-50, which they're managing to produce, maybe not on a mass scale, but these are these are stealth missiles, which can avoid radar more easily than the missiles they've been using up till now, which are the more conventional cruise missiles, sort of old generation type. But these KH-50s have a stealth capacity. They're manufactured with integrated circuits and other components that they managed to get from the West or the Chinese. They managed to skirt sanctions, and they are managing to get the kind of software required to produce very sophisticated guidance systems and stealth systems. Again, not in the mass capacity that they would need to really have an overwhelming advantage, but certainly enough to produce missiles that they can use for very targeted strikes against very specific and very high value targets. They've got it. They've got that capacity. They've increased their precision recently. This has been an observation by some NATO analysts, even in their field operations. They've got better precision. At first, for a while, the Russian precision was quite poor, but they have perfected it throughout their defense systems, their artillery and missile systems. So I think, and as well as aircraft systems. So they're hitting now targets with far more precision and far more accuracy, and this is important. So this is more of this can be expected in this war. Russia has higher capacity, maybe not enough of it to ultimately make a decisive difference, but certainly enough to keep Ukraine very much on the defensive for a while. Any questions, Christian?
Yeah, I think so. The sabotage in Ukrainian ports is an international crime according to the Rome Statute. That's what happened now. Yeah, Russia attacked the Ukrainian ports. It's a sabotage.
It is.
That is terrible. That is terrible. Very terrible.
Yeah. And the effects, of course, and the way it's using it, as I said, I mean, they're destroying Ukraine's economy, and at the same time using their own grain gain political and military leverage in Africa and the Middle East at a time when the situation there is very, very fluid. I mean, when there's incredible instability. I mean, you've got these pro-Russian dictatorships taking control of a large chunk of Africa, almost the entire Sahel region. You've got Russia making inroads in Algeria and Libya. You've got Egypt in a very, very precarious situation. There are food riots there. This military government they have, General Assisi, is totally corrupt. They're engaging in all these fancy infrastructure projects and letting their people starve. Sisi himself said so. That it was in an amazing speech. He said the other day that it was acceptable to let the population should be prepared to starve for Egypt's progress in these massive infrastructure projects. I mean, useless stuff, big skyscrapers and stuff that there's no need for. Just a lot of generals getting a lot of kickbacks out of it. A lot of generals and a lot of political bureaucrats. And so you're getting food riots in Egypt. So yeah, I mean, Russia could now use this monopoly of grain to take back control of Egypt, and this would be an incredible coup for Russia if they could manage to leverage influence in Egypt, which they had lost to very great degree since the peace accords in Egypt between Anwar Sadat and Menachem Begin back in the 70s and 80s. They could gain it back now by being able to control Egypt's food supply, basically. So I don't know whether, I have not received information to the effect they're doing this, but I would assume that this is what they're going to do. This is what they're going to try to do. So they can also keep Assad going in Syria, giving him, they're giving a lot of the grain, they're giving some of the grain for free. I mean, they're totally distorting the grain market. I mean, I wouldn't buy grain futures at the moment because the price, the whole market system is completely destroyed. Russia's it's rationing their grain out to their allies. That's basically what they're doing, okay, and restricting anybody in Africa and the Middle East. Ukraine, basically, which was the other major supplier. All the other suppliers are too far away. You got Canada, the U.S., Argentina, and so on. But the closest supplier would be Russia and Ukraine. And by preventing Ukraine, it gives Russia total control over the grain supply to the Middle East and Africa. And so I think that's one factor that has to be really thought about in this regard. And of course, you got France retreating from the area. France has given up. France is leaving Niger, from what I'm told. I don't know. They've been going back and forth about it now for quite some time. But the latest is that Macron is pulling out the French troops from there. He's pulling out his ambassador. He's basically handing the country over to this military junta and the Russians, ultimately. So that's the situation there. And yeah, I mean, the way that I have not, as you say, it's considered a crime, an international crime. I have not yet heard, I mean, at least within my own reference, within my living memory, I have not seen a situation that a country uses its food, its food in this way, and bear in mind they can even leverage the Chinese grain market. Bear that in mind. Ukraine and Russia are also important suppliers of China, and so at a time when China is going into economic recession, if Russia can offer grain at very reasonable prices for the Chinese, at a time when there may be some food shortages, it would increase its leverage on Beijing and get the Chinese to supply them more software for their missiles. So the food weapon is becoming very essential in this war. At first, you had the energy weapon. And it turns out that didn't really work. But now now they're using the food weapon. So now they're using both energy, oil, gas, and food. And this could be a very, very, very potent strategy for Russia.
That's it. The food security is at risk. Yeah. It's at risk in the war, in Ukraine, in all.
World food security is not just at risk, but at risk of being controlled by Russia.
By Russia. That's it. Thank you, Martin. That is for conclusion. What is your conclusion at this moment?
Well, I think I already made the conclusion, Christian, and I think, as I say, what happens here in the Black Sea, where I am right now, I think more than anything else, will decide the future of the war in Ukraine. By the way, I've also forgot to mention, of course, it has not been a good week for Zelensky. His support, as I predicted, his support in Europe is starting to erode. This anti-Ukrainian candidate, pro-Russian candidate, got elected in Slovakia. The Poles are having all kinds of problems with Ukraine over the grain shipment, because they're trying to ship the grain through Polish ports, and that of course brings down that affects the price of Polish grain exports. So now they have that problem, and the United States your military aid to Ukraine has been frozen. There's about $5 billion in the pipeline, and that's it. That's maybe for a few more months of fighting. And unless the Democrats and the Republicans can get together on funding the government, this could drag on. There's a lot of growing opposition to funding this war in the U.S. as well as in Europe, both at the level of public opinion, and it's being felt politically. It's being felt in the governments. So that's another factor that has to be considered. So that's my conclusion. That, coupled with the problems that Ukraine is having in maintaining its economy under these circumstances, and Russia's continued ability to produce weapons, does not augur well for the Western strategy in the war in Ukraine at the moment.
That's real. The Black Sea is the point now. It's interesting in Russia. Thank you all. Subscribe. The Conflict Zone is your podcast. Subscribe and share this video in all media, in all followers. Thank you, Martin. See you again next podcast.
Thank you, Christian. See you later. See you soon.
Analyzing the situation in Ukraine. Today, we're fortunate to have Martin Arostegui with us, providing his expertise on the developing situation in Ukraine. As tensions rise and international concerns mount, Arostegui's insights will offer a deeper understanding of the complexities at play and the potential implications for global stability. A message from Dr. Christian Barrientos Ichaso. Before we kick off our conversation, I'd like to take a moment to express my gratitude to our audience. Your support, subscriptions, and engagement keep our mission alive to foster awareness and understanding of critical international matters. As an international company and business lawyer, I am deeply committed to sharing insights on international law, security, compliance, anti-corruption measures, tackling crime, and facilitating smooth trade relations. Stay connected. So whether you're an avid follower of international affairs, a business professional navigating the complexities of global trade, or someone seeking clarity amidst the chaos of international conflicts, podcast The Conflict Zone is your destination for accurate information and informed discussions. Ladies and gentlemen, grab your notepads, ready your questions, and get ready for an illuminating conversation with the one and only Martin Arostegui. Stay tuned because you won't want to miss a single moment of this episode. Thank you for joining us, and let's dive right into the heart of the matter.